Okay guys, hey, DNA Coil, newest, latest, greatest, coming from Storm. The big thing is everybody's always asking us all the time, what makes the ball so special? What's so special about DNA Coil? We tell them all the time it's an exo pearl cover stock, it's super coil, strong asymmetric, low RG, high diff, high intermediate. But the biggest thing is people always want to know, you got a couple different styles today. We're going to look at Steve the stroker, we're going to look at Yannick as the tweener, Chad's the cranker, we know, the big cranker, and then we got Chayton, the two-hander, which is the 9,000 RPM guy. So the biggest thing I think everybody always asks us is, man, what kind of layout is going to work best for me? I mean, I have that, I feel like I'm a lot like Steve, kind of a stroker, but maybe a little more speed, maybe a little less speed. But what layouts does Steve like best? What works best for the stroker? And then Yannick's the in-between guy, but kind of a lot of different layouts work for you on a lot of different patterns. So it's kind of like, okay, how's the DNA Coil going to match up to me? What would be the best layout for you? And Chad, big cranker, a lot of times kind of shies away from big ASIMs sometimes because it forces him to open his angles a lot, and sometimes, but there are a lot of places and things that this ball will fit, and we feel the DNA Coil kind of will match up a little bit better to a lot of different styles. And then Chayton, on the other hand, the two-hander, the big RPM guy, a lot of times there's a lot of urethane in those type of players. We see that, and then they migrate into some different layouts based on strength of covers and cores, and so we'll see some different things from each of you guys. And I think the big thing today is kind of getting you on the lane, seeing how the DNA Coil matches to you, and kind of what parts of the lane work best to play with that ball. And this is a really good one to kind of match up and give the public kind of what we feel works best for somebody like Steve, somebody like Yannick, somebody like Chad, and somebody like Chayton. So today I'm going to grab each one individually. We'll get you up on the lane. And today we're kind of bowling a little bit longer. It's a Route 66 pattern, 44, I think it's 44 feet, something like that, 6-to-1 ratio pattern. So there is a multiple angles that can come into play. People tell you a lot of times longer patterns, got to play them left. No, it's not always true. So today we'll kind of get you guys out here, get you on the lanes, kind of see where the ball matches up based on the layouts that we've chosen, and kind of what works best for you in what part of the lane, okay? Okay, Steve, so we chose a 5x4x2. So the reason for a 5x4x2 is we're trying to keep you a little more direct, so not to open your angles too much. A lot of times we get pins too strong, sometimes open your angles, and the rev rate doesn't quite give you enough through the pins. Yeah. So this allows you to kind of stay on top a little bit. So the 5-inch pin to PAP, a little more delay. The 4-inch mass bias to PAP gives us a little bit more flare transition, a little bit more kind of getting the ball to start across the PSA a little quicker. But then the buffer, the 2-inch buffer, allows that when it does slow down, it makes a quick transition. So this is going to be pretty good today on the pattern out here today. And what are we seeing today? I think you've thrown a little bit so far.
Yeah, Route 66, I mean, this is one of those where typically a pattern that's in that mid-40s length, I'm typically going to play a little bit more towards the middle of the lane. But the difference on this pattern is it's a little bit higher ratio from middle to the outside. So there's really more friction to the outside than you would normally see on a lot of longer patterns.
Sure.
So that allows me to keep my feet in target a little bit more to the right, maybe closer to the track area. So I'm going to try and play closer to 10 on this. And like I said, that should provide a nice shape on the lane and allow me to still get a little bit more recovery than a typical 44, 45-foot pattern.
Absolutely. A lot of times those longer patterns, we feel like we've got to stay closer to it. Yeah. And a lot of strokers are they're a little bit afraid to get more inside because they're afraid their ball won't hit. Right. So the nice thing is this allows us to get on top of that pattern a little bit more to the right and give us angle into the pocket. So let's see what it does. So we see that 5x4x2.
Yeah.
You got to stay a little more to the right. Big thing, a lot of shape going down lane. I mean, it's a lot of angle going through the pins.
Yeah, it feels like it, and it feels like as I'm throwing it, even though I'm a little, firmer and straighter with it, it feels like I have enough ball to pick up that my pin carry is going to be really good.
And even if you leak it a little bit right, I think on the long pattern, it's still going to give you the shape.
Yeah.
We saw you get a couple shots to the right, and they still shaped off the spot. Some got a little bit up the lane a little bit, and they still, that was like a trip 4 kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think kind of gives you both sides of the equation.
Yeah, which is nice. And as soon as I know I have a little bit of room out there, then it frees up your swing, you feel more comfortable, and then it's off to the races.
Well, you'd definitely be off to the races. All right, let's look at Yannick next. Okay, Yannick, you're the tweener. So a lot of players in this world fall in the in-between, kind of that majority of bowlers.
Yep.
So a lot of people look up to that style and go, hey, what would match up best for me on this ball? So in this one, we chose 4 1/4 by 5 1/4 by 2. So you being the in-betweener, not as much rev rate, but a little bit more than like Steve, we're going to force you a little bit more into the pattern just because you have enough speed and rev rate together. So a little stronger pin placement, but mass bias a little farther away so it doesn't want to kind of line up on its PSA too quick. And then the little shorter buffer, knowing that it'll slow down in transition in a quicker spot, lets you stay a little bit closer to the pattern, a little bit, you know, a few, maybe 4 or 5 boards left to where Steve was at.
Yeah.
So let's see what it does for you today.
Okay.
Is that good? Just like that. We see a couple boards left of Steve, and even as far as that one was a little bit up the lane compared to a couple others, it still held its line a little bit better, and then still gave you a lot of shape down lane. And you got a couple that went a little to the right, gave you still that response down lane, and we can see the difference out of that the DNA Coil versus the DNA, and a little more shape down the lane with the XO Pro cover stock.
Yeah, no, I think this, because it's a little bit stronger ball with a cleaner cover, it lets me play in my comfort area, especially even on longer patterns like this one, and still be able to play in that zone and trust that the ball has a stronger backhand and be able to turn back to the pins.
Sure, a lot of times we want to feel like maybe we need to use a solid a little bit more, and sometimes now we have a real strong low RG, high diff, a lot of intermediate, strong pro cover. So this kind of gives you that, even on a longer pattern, still gives you a lot of shape on both sides of the pattern. Good job. All right. Chad, the cranker, 600 plus RPMs.
I don't know.
Well, it is. We all know it is. Come on, don't be so modest.
Right,
I mean, come on, Guinness, here, world record holder here. But not a lot of tilt though, right?
Ooh, that's right. Pretty low,
So
maybe
you gotta,
5-6 degrees.
Sure. So you got to watch the tilt. Sometimes players asymmetrics want to get kind of lose tilt and kind of get tumbly forward. So for this one, 4 3/4 by 5 3/4 by 2. So a lot of people get a little nervous sometimes of moving that mass bias a little bit more left, closer to the track, because they're fearful, oh my gosh, it won't give me that. But a guy that has a lot of rev rate, that axis is migrating across that ball really quickly. So if it gets there too fast, sometimes they do lose tilt and they do kind of don't catch quite the roll through the pins. So let's see what this one does for you.
Okay.
Basically, we're going to probably be a little bit more left in both Steve and Yannick, and see how much we can open the lane up.
Yes, sir.
Well, you make it look easy, man.
Thank you. I'll take that.
I mean, now that matchup, though, that biggest thing we saw there, too, is that you could get them, once again, you could get them right. They recover, give you a lot of shape down the lane. You got the one up the lane, the 4-9 kind of, once again, crossing each other type thing. So the beauty of that layout kind of, once again, kind of gives you best of both worlds with it. So what do you see? I mean,
I feel like that it doesn't miss the spot compared to my Vibo when it can be a little cleaner on the touch cleaner side. This one really boomerangs around it a lot harder. It's a more rounded shape, but I know it's not going to miss the spot. And with that layout, I feel like that I can make just like a real subtle hand position and maybe create a 5+ inch pin to my you know, a PAP.
Sure,
Or
sure.
go the other way and
Kind of get
come
around a little
up.
bit more, take that and change, you know, gain a little bit more tilt, maybe a little more axis rotation, and bring the track down just a touch.
But if I don't have a cover that sees the mids like that one, I lose that versatility. And I know that one's going to pick up.
And that's the
when I need
beauty
it.
of this one, that cover core combination. That cover, just like you said, it doesn't miss it front to back. And it very responsive down lane, but that little blend of having the asymmetry but still has a little bit of symmetric type roll to it, kind of best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Looks good. Okay, Chayton, usually the guy behind the camera makes all this beautiful magic happen, but now
right.
you're the guy in front of the camera.
Yes.
But you are our in-house two-hander, the 9,000 RPM man. And so the big thing about two-handers is you got to be careful sometimes. Every two-hander feels like, man, I need to drill the weaker pins. I need to, you know, have that pin not as far above, up that midline.
Yep.
So for this one, a 4x4x4, because the big thing that works really good for you in a lot of strong asymmetrics. You've seen
Yes.
success out of those in the past.
Yep.
So now let's enhance the arsenal and see how this one matches in, because now we have that distance of 4 inches to the PAP, which gives us more flare, but a bigger buffer, and then also a little bit above the grip center line, so that we create not a little bit quicker transition, but not overly fast in the transition. So
Yes.
this one should match up. You'll be a little bit more left than Chad was. Kind of see where we match up.
Let's do it.
Oh,
That one was pretty good.
that was really good. So those 4x4x4, use it in a lot of asymmetric. So
Yep.
kind of give us what you saw here today, and that kind of for you, the big
Yeah.
two-hander.
Yeah, it allows me to play in the area of the lane that I want to. And like you kind of said, when you don't want to go too weak,
Right.
this ball kind of smoothens out the transition for
Sure.
me. Because if I used to drum a little weaker, and they'd get unpredictable. So
Sure.
they would snap off the spot or miss it. And this gets really consistent on where it hooks, so I can kind of just hit it and trust it.
Yeah, the big thing is that, once again, like Chad talked about, that front to back, it really never misses it going front to back. And then you got once again, you got one that was a little bit up the lane, it kind of held its line, right, you know, flush through the pocket, and then the one was a little light and it sent some wicked messengers across. So, I mean, I think once again, you got kind of the best of both worlds in the new one.
Yes, sir.
Okay.